Please welcome to the stage, from Microsoft, Mr. Mike Pell.
Good morning. Good morning. I love having my own theme music. That is the most awesome thing ever. How you guys doing this morning? Good? Y'all fired up? You ready? I'm pretty fired up. My Hawks got their mojo back last night. You guys are here ready to go. Janet was absolutely right. We're at a pivotal moment right now. So when David and Janet asked me to put a quick talk together for you guys, because I don't have that long, I could tell it for hours, Janet actually inspired me. So the very first thing that she did for me was sort of give me the centering for this talk, which is that visual communications is changing everything for everybody. It's not just this room of people, it's like all of our customers, it's what we do at home, it's what we do at work. So I just want to talk to you very, very quickly about where we think things are going. So the first thing is, to me, visualizing business is very all-encompassing. It's a huge, huge statement. What it really means is that we're trying to use, we're visual creatures, right? Like humans, react very well to visuals. It just helps us understand better. So when I, was thinking about what could I possibly tell you guys, I'm just going to try to give you a very quick tour of everything I talk about, work on every day, and we'll see where we get to. So for me, the very first thing that we have to think about is, if you were to sort of boil it down, try to summarize what we're going after, it's these three things. When we try to communicate, when we try to talk to somebody else, whether it's a coworker, a customer, or somebody else, we really have to try to be clear because everybody's busy, right? Everybody has way more things to do than they could possibly fit. When we try to surface insights, we want them to turn into action. You know what I mean? We can't just throw tons of data at people and expect that the right thing's going to happen. We have to be very careful to put the right information in front of them at the right time. And finally, my favorite is experimenting. When we explore, when we try new things, when we're not afraid to fail, that's when the great movement forward happens. And so you'll see very quickly what we're going to do here. I hope you guys don't mind. I'm going to demo some things for you very quickly. So first of all, this is not what data visualization is about. Everybody talks about big data, right? It's all over the news. We're using data, everybody's using data. It's not about some super smart guy. It's not about 1995 pie charts and bar charts either, right? Data visualization, to me, is as simple as this. Does anybody agree that this is data visualization? Yeah, pretty much, right? Data, 59 degrees, right? Visualization, text, numbers. It doesn't have to be a graphic. Right? Text, and actually a lot of good typography is the best visualization sometimes for your information. I also think, don't look down your nose at me because this is what I ate for breakfast yesterday. To me, this is data visualization too, right? They have a database full of all the stuff you can buy at McDonald's. They visualized it beautifully so customers can see what you can get. So again, this whole thing is very, very broad. It's not isolated to just pie charts and bar charts. So of course, the world's business is run on Excel, always has been. So I sort of want to show you a state-of-the-art demo. Can we do that? I'm just going to switch over here. So everybody recognizes this. We all know that we can do very quick visualization by just selecting some data in Excel and just saying, well, just give me a recommended chart. Right, done. There you go. State-of-the-art. Not buying that, are you? Try again, Mike? All right. Let's try again. Oh, by the way, my friend John Schwab just reminded me the other day, this is like a PSA. Excel is not really the root of all problems when it comes to trying to get your point across, okay? People make bad charts, right? It's look, we just make the tools, right? It's you getting up. I'm just kidding, but it's true. We all have to put a little bit of effort in. So what I thought I would show you, probably a little bit better example of what we consider state-of-the-art, is when you go out to places like this, There's some great work being done in interactive graphics, right? When things become interactive, you can actually start to explore. Remember, like the last point I talked about was exploring. So let's just see if we can get this thing to load here. It's actually pretty fun. So there's work being done where people on purpose design things to be very interactive. They want you to explore. They want you to ask questions. So you can see, like this doesn't look anything like what I just showed you, right? We have all these menus. You know, I have like all these different things I can look at. This is for Europe. This is a couple of years old. But I can go back through time, see how things change. I can actually like check in and see, you know, I can dig deeper. When I roll over some of these things, right, I can actually see the underlying data. Or I can go back. It's like, it's very googly, right? It's like bright colors, like moves around. It's like kind of awesome. So this is what we mean when we talk about state-of-the-art visualization, right? When you want to visualize your business, your organization, your community, what's happening with your life, you don't want to do it in dead pixels. You know what I mean? You don't want to do it as static. You want to try, if you can, to bring the information to life. So this is really a much, much better experience, you know, for anything really. So that's what we sort of consider state-of-the-art. I bet you guys know the answer to this. When we do all this hard work of trying to put information together in the right form for people to consume, do they usually get it? Of course not, right? I would say it's actually like kind of rare that people actually get what you mean right away. It takes a lot of work, right? It takes a lot of effort and practice to get the right form, the right message, the right packaging for things. And so what I'm hoping to do is sort of shed some light on why that is. So we have data, right? So like you look at the data part of this, and data is very complicated. You have all the stuff on the top, which are things that people have to do, right? We have to manually create or make up the stories, the insights, right? We have to identify the insights. We also have to figure out what is information, right? Like data and information are two different things, right? Like data is data. Information is something I can tell you that you might remember. You know, below we have, you know, like the bits, like the hard actual data coming from sensors, coming from anywhere. When we put those things together, it's a little bit difficult. So for me, the visualization part is much more interesting. So let's just go back and I'll talk about a couple things in particular. When we try to do the best job we can, we usually call it data storytelling. I'm not super fond of that term, but the fact is we're trying to actually put, like, because people are good with stories, right? Like we all listen to stories, we like stories. So when we do data storytelling, you know, this has been going on for years and years and years and centuries, I guess, if you really go back to it. Everything has been dead, static, you know, it hasn't moved. Recently, last 5 years, 10 years, stuff started to move. We can make it interactive, we can narrate it. But now we're getting to the good part. The really good part is when you get to explore, your customers get to explore, everybody can actually sort of play what if and think, you know, what if that was a little bit different? So the thing that I find that we're all trying to get to when we put any kind of information together, any kind of visualization, any kind of infographic, whatever you want to call it, even telling a story to a customer, right? We're in a sales situation. We're just trying to get a point across. You're trying to get to the moment of clarity. It's that one particular second where everything becomes clear. You know exactly what that person meant. And so for me, this is the best example, right? Like, you know, we all see this kind of stuff every day. Whether it's your file system, you're in the data center, it's like, you know, stuff going on at work. I mean, if you stare at the numbers and you do the math, you figure out that you're going to have a problem very soon. But you have to actually stare at it. You have to actually do the math. Why didn't we just tell you? The computer knew that, right? Why didn't we just tell you that? I don't know. Still trying to figure that out. But when you compare these two things together, you can see that surfacing insights, right? You know, part of the storytelling, like bring me the most important part. Like, we got to start doing that. We can't just let people do all the heavy lifting anymore. So I know you guys are working on this. We're working on this. Like, everybody's trying to get better at surfacing insights. And, you know, for my money, all the work that we do should lead to some kind of action. So again, we sort of look at like the spectrum where we have data and visualization. The action part, like super important, right? And why is that? Because if you go to all this trouble to put something in a form that people can consume, you want one of two things to happen. You either did such a great job that they don't need to do anything else, right? It's like, they're like, hey, you told me everything, we're done, right? This is awesome. Or they're gonna say, maybe I do need to take a next step. Maybe I do need to do something else. And both of those are great. Like I think both of those things are fine. But the thing that we have to sort of work on more is the decision making, because this is where the ROI comes in. This is where like people actually can assign some kind of value, to what we do with visualizations. So for me, action's super important, right? It's all about the action. Just ask Marshawn Lynch. And there's a new breed of tools and things that are happening now called data explorers that I just want to show you. I'd rather just demo if you guys don't mind. So this is super secret. You guys can't tell anybody I showed you this, all right? It's like, it's just us, right? Like just us? All right. And frankly, I don't know. I guess they'll be okay with me showing it. You guys are friends. So Sandance is a project by Microsoft Research. What Sandance is all about, really, is I can even go back to Excel and sort of show you where we're at with this. So remember this, like we made this awesome chart, right? I could have just sort of gone back here in Excel and said new, just made like a new spreadsheet and go over to the Sandance tab and say, hey, insert some data into this and visualize it. And what do I get? This is all web-based, by the way, even though it's sort of being drawn within Excel. This is just a bunch of random data points, right? Not so different than what you would look at in Tableau or Power BI or like whatever visualization tools you might use. But for us, the experiment here is to explore the data set. So let's just say, maybe this is not the right chart type. Let's look at a scatter plot. So you say, oh, you just showed a map, right? And actually, this is not a map. The reason that this is just a bunch of dots. You think it's a map of the United States because part of the data that's encoded is the lat long, right? Is its position. This is census data, so all these positions know, like I can just select a few dots and you sort of isolate that particular area. But much more interesting to me, if I could show you, let's sort of colorize this a little bit by income. Just make it like a little bit easier to see. So we can start to explore this, and it's actually quite fun. And you learn some interesting things too. So if I go back and say, you know what, this is sort of like in the modern era of business, you can take these data exploration tools and just start working with any data set, any CSV file that you can import. This one, census data happens to be like very, very interesting. So we can say, let's look at income versus, let's say education. And what you notice is a lot of people, lower incomes, are not very educated according to the census data. But you also notice up here, because this is a data explorer, you're like, these are like look like outliers for some reason. Why is that? Like what's going on with that particular point up there? It turns out that, so can anybody figure out who's very, very educated but doesn't make a lot of money? Exactly, grad student, right? Turns out that this particular grad student goes to Ithaca. This one over here, I'm pretty sure, if we look at the data, Santa Clara, California, this is at Stanford. Right, so as you start to explore data in these different ways, and we can say, you know what, like this is not really the best representation for me either, so maybe we just want to go back, and this whole thing was built to be very fluid. So you see, like moving between these different types is supposed to be quick and supposed to allow me to explore and not think too hard about getting it into a particular form. Okay, so we have a lot of fun with these. Hopefully this is going to be shipping pretty soon. You guys can play around with this too. But that's just an example of doing one kind of data exploration. So let's go back, and now I'd like to show you, because there's a lot going on. So this is a different type of data explorer, very, very different. And you're probably saying, what the hell is that, Mike? It actually, turns out, is absolutely state-of-the-art of data visualization. So this thing is called a Halo. It's a company called ORA, that developed this. This is what they consider like the 21st century pie chart. Like it's the new way to encapsulate data. Turns out that this is all web-based, but you can also explore these things. If you knew what all these things meant, like we can go back and see. Let's go back and like look at a little demo here. We can actually see that they're representing multiple dimensions. Here's all of our data. So we can isolate data points just like in the one I just showed you. But we can also look at different aspects, and this feels alive. right? This doesn't feel like dead pixels. This doesn't feel like something that I packaged up for you and handed you and said, oh, look, this is how you should use your information. This is inviting you in, right? It's inviting you in to explore, to learn, to figure out what are they trying to tell me exactly about these things. So I show this to you just for the purpose of saying there's a lot of very great experimental work being done that we should all really pay attention to, because it's turning out that it's going to pull us all forward, right? Visualizations are meant to be interactive, right? They're never really meant to be static. It's unfortunate that many of them are developed that way because they were done for PowerPoint text, or they were done for like Word documents or email or whatever else you tend to use. So what are the challenges? As we're like working and we're exploring and we're pushing forward, we run into things, right? And we start to focus on the wrong things by accident, not on purpose. Like nobody does this on purpose. Nobody wants to do bad things on purpose in data visualization, but they do, and there's reasons for it. The first thing is we tend to end designing for the initial impression, right? So we want to capture you right away because we know everybody's busy, they're like running around, they got a lot of things to do, but we can't really do that. And I'll tell you why. Because if we design for the initial impression, we sort of lose the opportunity to stay with you, right? We lose the opportunity to help you learn more and explore. As designers, super guilty of this, right? We do this all the time. Same thing with novelty. We're all trying to stand out, right? Four Winds does some amazing work, right? People, in your groups do amazing work, but they're trying to be different because they're trying to capture business, trying to get people's attention. Is that wrong? No, it's not wrong, but it sort of hurts the familiarity part, right? People are in a hurry, they need to sort of grasp onto something. Cleverness is sort of in the same bucket, right? Like, love when people are clever, like designers are really great at this, but if we're too clever, then again, we lose people, right? So like this is kind of like the dark side of visualization. I'm just telling you guys, just so you know, like full disclosure, like I do this, you guys might do this, I don't know. But we should be aware of it, right? We should be very, very aware. Data density, oh, this is a good one. This is my favorite. Okay, have you guys ever seen this? You know what this is? I have no idea. I just, I think it's a network diagram. Okay, I'm asking you guys, please, if you ever work with somebody who's putting something like this together or wants to use anything like this, just like, please don't ever do anything like this, okay? Nobody can understand what's going on. The whole point of that was to get something across, but you please tell the person what you're trying to represent. You could have done it in text. You could have done it in a couple lines. You didn't need to show that big spaghetti mess, right? It doesn't help anybody. That amount of data can be boiled down to, there's 457,392 points. That would have been better to tell me than like to put that thing on the screen, right? It's like visually, it's novel, right? It was interesting, captured my attention, didn't tell me anything about what I wanted to know. We also are very, very guilty of designing for computers and phones right now with touch, but we're ignoring all the other inputs that we have to sort of get things across to people. So I'm just telling you guys, when you're doing this type of work, please look around for other ways to let people interact, whether it's sensors like Kinects or like, you have like Magic Leaps and other things you can do. Even just cameras and laptops, like great way to interact. You don't have to be so reliant on mouse and keyboard. And this is just sort of like an internal thing that I like to talk about. We compete with each other a lot because we're trying to win business. We're trying to sort of one-up each other. It'd be so much better at this point of what's like, Janet talked about this being a pivotal point. It is. And if we work as a community, we'll all be so much better off. Like share things, like just really try to keep things going. And then finally, beauty, right? So as designers, again, we like to design beautiful things. This was beautiful to me. I don't know, you guys might have thought this was like, why didn't Mike show that? I still have no idea. This is very, very interesting work. It's actually brilliant work, but it tends to be more beautiful than clear when you first see it. So it's like guilty. Like even though I love this work, I think it's great, it's guilty of a couple things that I just showed you. So instead of being clearly beautiful like they are, better to be beautifully clear, I think. Right? So there's something to be taken away from that. So when we think about this, It's like, every once in a while I say something that's like, kind of makes sense. This is one of those things. We really have to try to do more to help people unfold things, right? They'll stay with it more. They'll be more interested. It's great, like if you can get immediate impact, awesome. But try to design so that people can keep, finding new things in it, right? Okay. So how do we experience all this? This is a good one. So way back when, all we had was print, right? And we sort of evolved to having like radio or just like listening to things. And now we're sort of in this like display era, right? It's like our phones, our large projection stuff. And so people are really focused on screens. Well, it turns out that we are just about to leave this time and sort of start to move beyond that as a natural, very normal thing to do. So like there's Apple Watch, right? There's like all kinds of other wearables that people are gonna have clothing, like smart fabrics. There's all kinds of things happening. So we're gonna move away from screens. So we have to figure out how to visualize, communicate, get our points across using different mediums. Super interesting, right? It's gonna be really great. So as we do that, just be aware, I sort of drew this just to make sure that you understand, all the work happening in like the networking layer, like collecting all the telemetry and all this like sensor data coming in, super interesting source of information for you guys to figure out how to empower your businesses with, right, your organizations. So don't ignore that. That's really where we should be looking. We should be looking down instead of up sometimes at the visualization stuff. And besides that, for me, I think you sort of have to think about where do we go from here, right? Like there hasn't been a lot of like super breakthrough new stuff. I mean, like some of the stuff I showed you, I think is really great. You may not, but I think that we can do better. And by doing better, we have to focus on the business part of this, right? So if you look at all these areas, like this is where we should all be working together, right? What are the opportunities? What are the great ideas that we need to visualize, right? How do you visualize people by not using an org chart? You thought about that? I do all the time. It's hard, actually. It's like, I don't know. People don't want to be put in org charts. Like it makes them feel bad, right? If they're not at the top of the org chart. It's like, how do we visualize that better? It's a great problem to dig into. And then of course, all the stuff like financials and process, there's been a ton of work in that area, ton of work. I still don't think it's as good as we can go. So what I'm going to sort of ask you guys is, let's try to fill this in together. Can't really do it today. I mean, actually I'll stay and we could do it like out in the hallway if you guys want to do this. But I think that this is an opportunity for us to actually work together to figure out how do you, as we go forward, visualize this kind of stuff. I mean, can you imagine financials done differently than they are today? It's like, we all have the standard, P&L statements and quarterly filings, and we have our charts that go with that, but that's not like the end of human ingenuity, right? I mean, yes, there's a familiar part. We can do much better than that. Remember, this talk is about visualizing your business. So I would ask you, think about how can we look differently at these areas in particular and do a much better job of getting our points across. So, of course, we've all been in these meetings, right? So someone says, well, Mike, that's really great. Yeah, people really got it. But what's the ROI on that? Exactly. Like, how much money did you spend on that? And sometimes I have to say, you can't really measure it in terms of dollars and cents. Unfortunately, I mean, we all have to learn how to measure things a bit better. But for me, there's a continuum, right? There's this continuum of intellectual and business and emotional aspects to visualizing your business, to getting your point across, to making things clear. For me, on the intellectual side is, when you see something super interesting, what's the first thing you do? You may share it. I mean, these days everybody has a phone, they want to share interesting stuff. But you also start to ask yourself questions, right? When you see something brilliant, it's like an idea and question generator. So that's where a lot of the value, and when people question, people are curious, right? Like, we're all pretty smart. When we ask questions, good things happen. So I think a lot of value comes from that. On the business side, we talked earlier, visualizations, if done right, help lead you to making a decision. It could be deciding to do nothing, right? And frankly, doing nothing is fine. Like, if I did such a good job, you got the point, great, let's move on. We got a lot more to do. Or you may decide, hey, maybe I do really want to invest in that. Maybe I really do want to go do that class. Whatever this happens to be, we have to do a better job of saying, you know what, moving people to decision is something we can measure and be proud of. And finally, on the emotional side, this is kind of the part that designers really work in, right? Like I think we sort of focus maybe a bit too much on emotions sometimes when we design, but this is the most interesting. Like we're people, right? Visualizations don't benefit machines. Visualizations benefit people. People are emotional. So we have to understand what's really going to appeal to people so that we can sort of get them involved, right? And you can measure that. That's a valuable thing to do with all this. So finally, I'd love to sort of leave you guys with, where's this all going? So I talked about we're moving to an era now where we're going beyond the screen. So we need to learn how to visualize in different ways. So great. So AR, augmented reality, is I can pick up, like a phone, an iPad, like any kind of tablet, and sort of move it around, and I will get an enhanced view of my world. I could wear Google Glass, right? Get an enhanced, augmented, version of reality. I'll see information overlaid. This is a really important field for us to think about also as we're thinking about visualizing our business. MR, mixed reality. So things like HoloLens, the PlayStation, like all kinds of things are coming out now where holograms, things that exist in the real world, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever seen some of the stuff coming out, but they look real. So what if that was our information? How would that change things? What if we could actually interact with our financials? Would that help? I think there's a lot of great work there. And virtual reality, sorry, like a little Halloween humor, virtual reality has to find its sea legs, so to speak, but super interesting for helping to visualize the state of businesses and organizations. And frankly, next time we meet, when we walk out in the hallway, I'm kind of curious what we're going to be looking at together, because I have a feeling it's going to be pretty amazing. So for me, visualizing business is the biggest trend. It's the biggest pivot point. It's the most important thing that any of us could be working on right now. And so as we sort of think about where to go from here, I think really you have to reflect back on all the things we talked about. It's time for us to work together to figure this out. So if we do, this time next year, it's going to be pretty amazing. So thanks. What I'd like to do, if you guys don't mind, is that I have a couple minutes, or maybe I don't, maybe I'm like over. Do I have time for a question? All right. He's like, get off the stage, get off. Any questions? You want to come up? Come on up. Come on, yes, come on. I mean, I'd rather just talk about this. Yeah, come on. Come on. Hi. I'm Mike, by the way.
Hi, Mike. I'm Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Nice to meet you. My question is regarding the sandbox, or sand demo.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Question is regarding the sand demo that you showed us.
Yeah, Microsoft Research.
Yes. When will that be available?
Well, remember, I wasn't supposed to show it to you.
Right. So hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically, like early next year, if you were to make something up, probably.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Question? I know,
my question.
You don't want to come up here, right?
Yeah. I'm stuck in the middle here. So
Okay.
what is Microsoft doing along the lines of empowering their employees with information? Are they doing any type of boards?
Wow, that's a great question. What's Microsoft doing in terms of empowering employees with information? Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that. So I was talking about this earlier this morning with Janet. Microsoft has traditionally been a very data-driven company. Microsoft folks, they love numbers, they super smart, like to be able to use numbers in interesting ways, like winning arguments. That's a favorite thing to do with data and numbers. When we're not trying to win arguments using data, we're actually collecting telemetry from our products and services to help make decisions. And one thing as an organization, our CEO, Satya Nadella, would like us to be more data-driven, more data-informed in how we move forward. So not just sort of flying blind and making decisions based on what happened like 2 years ago, but actually taking current telemetry and figuring out what to do with it. So employees are really encouraged to go get all the latest data. We have access to it with our internal tools, figure out what's going on, and then try to make the best decisions we can to move forward and keep learning. Like, and we fail, and like we get up and we try again, and we sort of keep iterating on collecting information, doing experiments, and seeing how far we can push things. So that answer the question? Yeah? One more? See, all right, so you guys are done with me. All right, thank you. I really appreciate the time to be here.